projector had been Wo-1 Danny Decker's whole job that morning. Keep the slides moving. Keep the coffee warm. Keep his mouth shut. Aldrin's second-floor conference room held the kind of brass that made a warrant officer want to be a wall. 2 colonels, a lieutenant colonel, 4 Allied observers in Foreign Service ribbons, and the chair of the table, Colonel Harold Voss, signals career, stretched back, far enough that he wore his certainty like a second uniform. Decker had run the projector for 3 of these inter-Allied symposiums. He knew how they went. What he had not expected was First Lieutenant Nora Callum. She came in last, which he noticed, carrying a single manila folder and a flash drive she set beside the podium without ceremony. She was 27, maybe 28, with dark hair pulled back, and the kind of stillness that Decker associated with people who had stopped needing the room's approval some time ago. She wore her uniform the way you wear something you earned, and she stood at the front of the room, while Colonel Voss finished his side conversation, and settled back in his chair with the patient, slightly bored expression of a man who had already decided what the next hour would contain. She introduced herself without preamble. First Lieutenant Nora Callum, Army Signals Intelligence, 14 months on the Coldwire Analytical Program. She was here to present a pattern intercept on the layered enemy communications grid that Allied teams had been unable to crack since the prior spring. Voss let her speak for 4 minutes. Decker was advancing slides, clean charts, a frequency map, a layered grid overlay that he did not fully understand but that looked, even to him, like serious work. Then Voss raised one hand. "Lieutenant," he said, not unkindly, the way a man uses a tone when he wants to seem patient in front of an audience. "What you're showing us is a pattern match built on incomplete intercept windows. A 14-month solo program with no peer validation. That's not analysis, that's signal noise dressed up in a map." The room shifted. Decker felt it. The subtle collective exhale of men to see which way the air was going to go. Major Tressel, 2 seats down, pulled Callum's folder toward him, glanced at the top page, and passed it left without comment. The Allied observer from the second country held it briefly and set it down. The file made its way around the table and came to rest in front of nobody in particular, face down. Callum stood at the front of the room and did not move. She did not flush. She did not raise her voice. She said quietly, "Program identified 3 grid layer shifts in the 14-month window. All 3 were followed by confirmed interdictions in the Allied log. Correlation," said Voss, "not causation. Not verification." He glanced at his watch. "Let's take a short break and move to the afternoon block." Decker reached for the projector remote. He was good at following the room. He had been following rooms his whole career, but his hand stopped on the table because he had seen something no one else in that room had seen. 3 weeks ago, running cops on the 3rd floor, he had fed the wrong stack into the machine and gotten 2 pages of a classified summary he was not cleared to, read before he realized his mistake, and walked them straight to the document officer. He had not read them. He had seen the header, program designation, Coldwire, source 1LTN, Callum, status, Allied distribution confirmed. His mouth was dry, the break was called. Officer stood, stretched, moved toward the side table with the coffee. Callum capped her marker, gathered her folder, and began rolling up the grid overlay with the careful, unhurried movements of someone who had been here before. Not this room, but this moment. Decker watched the file sitting at the far end of the table, face down, untouched. Then the door opened. Brigadier General Carol Haynes came in without announcement, and with the specific energy of a senior officer who has been in the building for 20 minutes doing something else and has now arrived to find out one thing. She was a 2-star, compact and direct, with the kind of service record that turned hallways quiet. She looked at the room, clocked who was present, and sat down without ceremony. "Pulled the Allied interdiction log this morning," she said. 3 confirmed grid layer shifts, 14 months, all followed by verified interdictions. Whoever matched those patterns, I want them in the room. The silence was the kind Decker felt in his chest. Voss set down his coffee. "We've been reviewing the program, General. There are some analytical methodology questions. Who ran the program?" It was not a question. Decker's hand moved before his brain could stop it. He reached across the table, picked up the face-down folder, and said, in a voice that came out steadier than he expected. "Lieutenant Callum, ma'am. She's right here." Every head in the room turned. St. Callum had not moved from the front of the room. She stood with her folder under one arm and looked at the general with the same expression she had, worn since she walked in, the expression of someone waiting for the room to catch up. "Show me the program file," said General Haynes. Decker's fingers found the flash drive Callum had left beside the podium. He was already moving to the projector input. The Coldwire file opened on the main screen, and it was not what the room had dismissed. It was 14 months of documented work, not guesswork, not noise, not a single analyst's intuition papered over with charts. It was a layered frequency analysis built on 847 Intercept windows, each one time-stamped, sourced, and cross-referenced against the Allied communications log. The pattern map that Voss had waved away as incomplete was, in full, one of the most detailed enemy grid analyses Decker had ever seen projected in that room, and he had run the projector for 3 years. 3 confirmed grid layer shifts, each one flagged by the program an average of 11 days before the interdiction event. Not correlation. Diction. Verified prediction entered into the Allied record, confirmed by 2 independent theater commands. The room had gone absolutely still. Moitchwessel was leaning forward, with both elbows on the table, reading the screen with his mouth slightly open. The Allied observer had produced a pen from somewhere and was writing without looking down at the paper. Colonel Voss had not moved. He was looking at the screen with the expression of a man recalculating something he could not afford to have gotten wrong. General Haynes read for a long moment. The room held its breath with her. Then she said, "Coldwire." She said it the way you say a call sign when you know what it means, quietly, with weight. Callum said, "Yes, ma'am. You built this alone. 14 months, yes, ma'am." Haynes looked at the screen for another 3 seconds, then she stood up. She was not a tall woman, but the room felt the standing. Every officer at the table rose with her. Not because someone called the room to attention, because the thing on the screen and the woman who built it had made it impossible to remain seated. They rose the way men rise when they understand, without being told, that they are in the presence of something that has already outrun them. Voss rose last. He was looking at the table. "This program," General Haynes said, "is formally entered into the Allied signals record, attributed to its architect." She looked at Callum. "Lieutenant, I want a full briefing, your complete methodology, and a working copy of the Intercept model on my desk by Friday." "Yes, ma'am. And I want it briefed at the theater command level, all of it." She paused. "You have a call sign?" "Coldwire, ma'am." "Then Coldwire goes on the distribution header. Not Army Signals Intelligence. Program Coldwire. Her name and her call sign." Haynes turned to the table. "That's the standard we hold when someone solves what 14 months of Allied effort could not." No one spoke. Voss nodded once, briefly, without looking up. Decker stood at the projector with his hand still on the remote. The file was still on the screen, the pattern map, the E847 Intercept windows, the 3 confirmed predictions, and the room was still standing. Lieutenant Nora Callum was writing something in her folder, with the same unhurried steadiness with which she had walked in. She had never asked them to believe her. She had only asked them to look. Later, much later, when Decker tried to explain to a younger warrant officer what he had witnessed that morning, he found he could not frame it as a victory. Not exactly. It was more precise than that. It was the specific moment when a room full of trained, experienced men was forced to reckon with the distance between the judgment they had made and the truth that had been standing in front of them the whole time, patient and certain, waiting for the screen to catch up. He thought about the folder, face down at the far end of the table. He thought about the 4 minutes Voss had given her before the hand went up. He thought about the file, 847 windows, 14 months, alone. He took a long time, deciding he had been wrong to follow the room. He hoped he would not need that long again.